All right, this is AP. We're starting Heart of Darkness. All right, so heard something yesterday. You'll be aware of the idea, the concept of darkness if you read the Bible. Once you read the book and realize that is it's the title, major theme. It's funny how the word darkness will you'll hear it. It'll be around. All right, so I'll start. The Nellie, a cruising yawl, swung to her anchor without a flutter of the sails and was at rest. The flood had made the wind was nearly calm, and being bound down the river, the only thing for it was to come to and wait for the turn of the tide. So it's a sailing vessel. 5 guys are on it, and they're going away from London, which means they're going east. And remember that the Thames River runs, of course, to the Channel, the English Channel, and the sea. But because it's fairly close to the sea, the change of tides affects the direction of the water. I don't understand all that, but I know that's what they cannot sail up a river. You can only sail down the river. Well, it's easier that way. So they're waiting for the river, the tide to change, so they won't have to sail against. You might find, I heard this yesterday. If I don't say it, I'm gonna forget it. The closest spot from England to France is, I think, Dover to Calais, or at least in that general area. It's 21 miles. And in 1926, I saw this for, I think, Women's History Month. A woman, she wasn't the first, but she was the fastest to swim from France to England, the 21 miles, except she ended up swimming 35 miles because of the currents. She couldn't swim in a straight line, so she had to divert her course so that she ended up swimming 29 miles. It's in 1926. I'm trying to remember how many hours it took her. That would have been nice to know. I can't remember. But she was literally in the water for, I don't know. I can't remember if it's in the teens or the 20s. I'll check that. But anyway, just a little trivia for you. The sea reach of the Thames stretched before us like the beginning of an interminable waterway. In the offing, you know what the offing is? You know what that term refers to? It's a nautical term to some degree. If you stand at the beach and look straight out into the ocean, where the horizon meet, that's the offing. The furthest you can see where the horizon and the sea meet would be the offing. So it says, in the offing, the sea and the sky were welded together without a joint. And in the luminous space, the tan sails of the barges drifting up with the tide seemed to stand still in red clusters of canvas, sharply peaked with gleams of varnished spirits. A haze rested on the low shores that ran out to the sea in vanishing flatness. The air was dark above Gravesend. Just circle that. There's literally a place called Gravesend, and that should prick your memory or your interest, because it's about darkness, it's about death. The whole book is about that. And the name of the place they are nearest is called Gravesend. And the further back still seemed condensed into a mournful gloom, brooding motionless over the biggest and the greatest town on earth. The director of the companies, I don't know what page you're on, I'm going to read this next paragraph and then you can help me. The director of the companies was our captain and our host. We 4 affectionately watched his back as he stood in the bows looking to seaward. On the whole river, there was nothing that looked half so nautical. He resembled a pilot, which to a seaman is trustworthiness personified. It was difficult to realize his work was not there in the luminous estuary, but behind him, within the brooding gloom. All right, so where does the story begin? This is a frame story. I'd like for you to write these down. I don't think we'll end up answering every single question. There are dozens and dozens of them, but they're good questions. They'll help. But the first one, where does the story begin? It begins where? Where are they? Which is where?
Which is on the River Thames
Which is where?
in England.
Which is where, near what town?
Norwich.
So they're east of London.
East of London.
Okay, so they're literally sitting in a sailing vessel on the Thames, what time of day? Maybe that's not fair to ask you yet, but it is dark or getting dark, so it is evening. There'll be more evidence of that later. And this is a frame story. So the narrator, who we'll call Conrad, he is, whoever persona of Conrad it is, he's sitting on a boat, a ship, with, I've heard this too, I think we sometimes use the term interchangeably, but ships contain boats. Like if there's a sailing vessel on a ship, we call that a boat, but we call the vessel that the boat is on, we call that a ship. And that may be more technical. Sometimes we just use them, boat, ships, what difference does it make? But anyway, I will call this a ship. All right, so who are the individuals? We don't know yet, so would you read, Kyle? We'll find out there are 5 people on the ship.
Vote for me.
How about it? You can, Max.
Between us there, as I've already said somewhere, the bond of the sea, besides holding our hearts together through long periods of separation, it had the effect of making us tolerant of each other's yarn and even convictions. The lawyer, the best of old friends, of the old fellows, had because his many years of virtues, the only cushion on deck, and was lying on the only rug. The accountant had brought out already a box of dominoes and was toying architecturally with stones. Marlowe was sat cross-legged right out, leaning against the mizzen mast. He had sunken cheeks, a yellow complexion, a straight back, a stoic aspect, with his arms crossed, the palms of hands outward, resembled an idol. The director, satisfied the anchor had given hold, made his way aft and sat down amongst us. We exchanged a few words lazily. Afterwards, there was silence on board the yacht. For some reason or other, we did not begin the game of dominoes. We felt meditative and fit for nothing but wasted staring. The day was ending in a scrutiny of still and exquisite brilliance. Water strewn aspect the lead, and the sky without a speck, as benign amidst the region of unsustained light. The very mist of the Essex marshes was like a gauzy and radiant fabric, flowing from the wooded rises inlands and draping the low shores in a
Diaphanous.
diaphanous folds. Only the gloom to the west, brooding over the upper reaches, came as sombre every minute, as if angered by the approach of the sun.
Okay, so who are the 5 individuals on board the yacht? Well, we already told you one, the narrator, that's Conrad. Who are the other 4? They told you. Look for them. Only one has a name. Even the narrator doesn't have a name.
The accountant.
The accountant?
Lawyer, and Marlowe.
Okay, the accountant who? Who's the other one?
The lawyer.
The accountant, the lawyer, Marlowe, Conrad, and who was actually the host? Probably his.
The director of companies.
Yeah, and they have no idea what he's a director of or what company he's a director of. So those 5 guys, only one has a name, and that's Marlowe. I think it's interesting that it's not just dark, it's twilight. I've heard that twilight is the most dangerous time of day to drive. At least they told me that in driver's ed years ago. But it seems obvious, if you've ever been out with that period of time, you can't see, your lights don't do any good. The other people have their lights on, seem to be more distraction than help. So it's really the hardest time of day to see. Wonder what that adds to the story we're about to read. Why that's an element here. Nobody can really see anything. Use words like gauze. You can see through gauze, but you can't see through, well, a diaphanous is a fine texture, permits, you can see through it, but it's hard for something to pass through it. So it's it is that kind of hazy, not quite dark, that you can't see much. Maybe it's, like I said, it's even easier to see in the dark than it is in the twilight. I think that's significant. Would you go to Max? No, you just read Max. Would you go to Ethan?
Is it at and?
And at last, yes.
And at last, and it's curved and imperceptible fall, the sun sank low, and from glowing white changed to a dull red without rays, without heat, as if about to go out suddenly, stricken to death by the touch of that gloom brooding over a crowd of men.
And I can see that even though it's April 1st, you're still not in the habit. I'd love to be able to look out and see you kind of naturally looking for things, circling things, underlining things. You're not doing that. You should be doing that. That's got to become a second nature if you're going to do well. So I'm going to have to tell you some things to underline. In this passage alone, that one paragraph, it talks about the fall of the sun. That's an interesting word, fall. The word death, the word gloom, and the word brooding. And then prior to that, you had words like meditative. You had gauzy, diaphanous, gloom, and brooding. Again, what does it mean to brood? I think I'll brood. It's not a happy kind of thing. It's more of a... What does it mean to brood? When you brood over something, what are you doing? You're worried about it. You're concerned about it. It's not a happy thinking about the day at the beach. It's something that's difficult. You need to underline these things. You need to write. You've got to learn to do that. And it's still not second nature to you yet. But the word fall, the imperceptible fall of the sun. Whenever you see the word fall, what should come to your mind in literature? Fall. What's a particular fall that should always trigger in the mind of someone reading literature? I heard it. What about creation? So the fall of man. So all these individual diction that the author chooses, he's doing it on purpose. He's got a plan, and you gotta pay attention to it. Keep reading, Ethan.
Forthwith, a change came over the waters, and the
Serenity. What is serenity? Serene, serenity. Placid. They mean peace and calm. So there's an odd peace and calm about it. It's really the calmest part of the day. It's twilight. You know, there's something about it. And nighttime, of course, generally is. Keep going.
It became less brilliant but more profound. The old river in its broad reach rested unruffled at the decline of day.
Okay, notice the word decline. Circle it. He's talked about the fall, the decline. The name of the book is The Heart of Darkness. You see, he's very consistent in kind of creating a mood and a theme here. Keep going.
After ages of good service done to the race, that people, its banks spread out in the tranquil dignity of a waterway leading to the uttermost ends of the earth. We looked at the
Venerable means old and respected.
stream, not in the vivid flush of a short day that comes and departs forever, but in the August light of abiding memories. And indeed, nothing is easier for a man who has, as the phrase goes, followed the sea with reverence and affection, and to evoke the great spirit of the past upon the lower reaches of the Thames.
It's usually pronounced Thames. I know it doesn't have an I in it,
Oh, shoot.
but that's usually it's probably the British pronunciation of THA. They're not ignoring that, but it probably comes out sounding when Americans hear it like it's an I. So even though it says THA, it's usually you hear Thames. They may be saying Tam, Tam, something like that. You don't hear the H. Go ahead.
The tidal current runs to and fro in its increasing service, crowded with memories of men and ships it had borne to the rest of home or to the battles of the sea.
Circle battles. Keep going.
It had known and served all the men of whom the nation is proud, from Sir Francis Drake
Circle his name.
to Sir John Flint.
Circle his name.
Knights all. Tilted and.
Titled.
Oh, shoot. That's embarrassing. Tilted.
Keep reading, keep reading.
The great knights, Aaron of the sea. It had borne all the ships whose names are like jewels, flashing the night of time. From the golden.
Circle that. That was Drake's famous ship. And the next name that you'll see was Franklin's famous ship. We'll talk about him in a minute.
Returning with her round flanks full of treasure to be visited by the Queen's Highness, and thus pass out of the gigantic tail to the Erebus and Terror.
Both of those ships belong to Franklin's exhibition. I'll tell you where he went.
Bound on other conquests, and never returned. It had known the ships and the men, or yeah. They had sailed from Deptford, from Greenwich, from Erith.
Okay, that's Greenwich. What do we know about Greenwich? What should you know about Greenwich?
Greenwich?
Yeah, do you know? What? Now listen to him. Shh. Tell him again. What does that mean?
It's like 0 on longitudinal line.
Exactly, and from that point on, that's where the time, the time scale begins.
There's actually, I believe there's a tower in there which holds a clock, which is
Yes.
used to be I don't think it's used anymore simply because we've got the atomic clock.
Sure.
But it's used as like the center of time.
So Greenwich, England, you could make the argument Greenwich, England is the center of the earth. It's you could start anywhere and say it's the center of the earth.
Perhaps the center of civilization.
Yeah, it symbolically, sure. Very good, keep going.
The adventures and the settlers, kings' ships and the ships of men on change, captains, admirals, the dark interlopers of the eastern trade, and the commissioned generals of East India fleets, hunters for gold or pursuers of fame. They all had gone out on that stream, bearing the sword and often the torch, messengers of the might within the land, bearers of a spark from the sacred fire. What greatness had not floated on the ebb of that river into the mystery and unknown earth? The dreams of men, the sea of Commonwealth, the germs of them.
And read the very next three words.
The sun set.
All right, just before we go, I want you to notice, Drake was a conqueror. Listen, he was an explorer. You know that name? Sir Francis Drake?
Yes, Sir Francis Drake.
Okay. Franklin was an explorer. He actually was he was searching for a northwest passage through the Arctic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean.
He died.
And he did. His ships got halfway through the passages up in the Arctic, and the men were never found. They disappeared. Probably died, of course.
Probably got lost off.
They did. They absolutely did. All right, guys, hey, listen, you're responsible for reading it. We'll probably do some more follow-up when we get back. We'll have a great couple weeks.